grab a seat or wait down the hallway for your coffee, that would be awesome. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming back this month. It is so nice and beautiful and sunny out today. I'm excited. I'm excited for this month especially because it's Mother's Day coming up here pretty soon. So shout out to all the moms. So for this month, first of all, if you've never been here before to the coalition, welcome. My name is Robert. I'm one of the leadership members here with the Spokane Homeless Coalition. We meet every first Thursday of the month, same time, same place, unless you hear something different on the email distribution. But we here at the Coalition love to create this culture of providing a platform for education, for presenters to come up here, and connection of resources. And networking with each other. You guys all do that before the meeting, which is awesome. But if you have never been to a coalition, I'd love to start off each coalition with just a reflection. So part of my role outside of the coalition is I work at Providence Community Clinic. And Providence has a mission to be expression of God's healing love, witness through the ministry of Jesus, steadfast and serving all, especially those who are poor and vulnerable. And this month's reflection, since it is kind of themed for Mother's Day, future moms, considering, just all mothers. I was raised by a single mom, and I'm definitely a mama's boy. But part of today's reflection is, and you guys may have heard this story before, but I'm going to read through this story, one of sacrifice and one of just unconditional love for a little boy. And it goes like this. Once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy, and every day the boy would come and he would gather her leaves and make them into crowns and play king of the forest. He would climb up her trunk and swing from her branches and eat apples, and they would play hide and go seek. And when he was tired, he would sleep in her shade. And the boy loved the tree very much, and the tree was happy. But time went by, and the boy grew older, and the tree was often alone. Then one day the boy came to the tree, and the tree said, "Come, boy. Come and climb up my trunk, swing from my branches, eat my apples, and play in my shade and be happy." "I'm too big to climb and play," said the boy. "I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money." "I'm sorry," said the tree, "but I don't have any money. I have only leaves and apples. Take my apples, boy, and sell them in the city. Then you will have money and you will be happy." And so the boy climbed up the tree and gathered her apples and carried them away, and the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and the tree was sad. And then one day the boy came back, and the tree shook with joy, and she said, "Come, boy, climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and be happy." "I'm too busy to climb trees," said the boy. "I want a house to keep me warm," he said. "I want a wife, I want children, and so I need a house. Can you give me a house?" "I have no house," said the tree. "The forest is my house. But you may cut off my branches and build a house, and then you will be happy." And the boy cut off her branches and carried them away to build his house. And the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time. And when he came back, the tree was so happy she could hardly speak. "Come, boy," she whispered, or "Come, boy," she whispered, "come and play." "I'm too old and sad to play," said the boy. "I want a boat that will take me far away from here. Can you give me a boat?" "Cut down my trunk and make a boat," said the tree. "Then you can sail away and be happy." And so the boy cut her trunk and made a boat and sailed away. And the tree was happy, but not really. And after a long time, the boy came back again. I'm sorry, boy, said the tree, but I have nothing left to give you. My apples are gone. That's okay. My teeth are too weak for apples, said the boy. My branches are gone, said the tree. You cannot swing from them. That's okay. I'm too old to swing on branches, said the boy. But my trunk is gone, said the tree. You cannot climb. I'm too tired to climb, said the boy. I'm sorry, said the tree. I wish I could give you something, but I have nothing left. I'm just an old stump. I'm sorry. I don't need very much now, said the boy. Just a quiet place to sit and rest. I'm very tired. Well, said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could. Well, an old stump is good for sitting and resting. Come, boy, sit down. Sit and rest. And the boy did, and the tree was happy. Happy Mother's Day to everyone on the 11th. I like to think of that as a good, symbol and reflection of motherhood, of just a sacrifice and coming back and always being a part of a loved one. So I love you, Mom. I miss you. I wish you were here. So along with that, again, thank you so much for the time that you guys commit each and every month. So right now, we're gonna kick off with the updates from the city has. So if the city folks can come up and share what you have, come on up. Don't be shy. And you can take a seat. There's a mic on this side or this side as well. And if you could introduce yourself and your role with the city for those who may be new. So welcome.
Hey, thanks. So I'm Dawn Kinder with the City of Spokane. And I want to just apologize out the gate because I am going to give some updates and then run to a doctor's appointment that I've been waiting much for, not to overshare, but I swear I'm not trying to be rude. So that's my personal disclaimer this morning. A couple of things that I wanted to just share with you all. Later today, not so far from right now, there will be 3 ordinances announced with the administration and some of our council members. All of those ordinances deal directly with the work you all do on a day-to-day basis, so I wanted to just give you a little bit of a brief summary of what those look like and encourage folks to utilize those council committees and council meetings to give feedback. Hopefully this kicks off some robust community discussion. The first of those ordinances is something that is being called Home Starts Here, and it's not really actionable code so much as it is a framework for the work that the city administration and council wants to see us focus on as we try and address homelessness in our community. The HOME is an acronym, as all good government code does. So the H stands for healthcare, the O stands for outreach and engagement. The M stands for multidisciplinary engagement. I did not love what the M stood for because those words are incredibly difficult to say quickly, but it's really around how do we coordinate with code enforcement, law enforcement, and other enforcement entities. And then the E stands for economic opportunity. Again, it's kind of a framework for all of the pillars we know are required for the work to be successful and the clients that we are all serving to have needs met. So that one's pretty simple. I know some folks have seen that this week in some other briefing sessions. The second ordinance, and again, I apologize for the speed here, but the second ordinance is a council-led ordinance that Nicolette potentially can answer questions on later as I leave, or council members as they arrive. It's really focused on feedback from the roundtable discussions that council held last fall around homelessness, and it's focused on some revisions to inclement weather to include wind chill and heat index instead of just temperature, as temperature is not always a great indicator of when we should activate. It also includes some changes around siting for shelters over 20 individuals. And then it has some language around a good neighbor agreement that would need to be executed for those sites between the city of Spokane and then the shelter operator as the only parties required to sign that good neighbor agreement. Many of you already have those kinds of policies and procedures in place, but this gives us an opportunity to kind of memorialize that between the provider of the shelter site and the city of Spokane. The third ordinance that is going to be announced later today is probably the most pressing in some ways. As many of you I'm sure have been tracking, Proposition 1 was overturned by the state Supreme Court a few weeks ago, which changed the policy landscape for the city of Spokane. We know there's going to be various proposals coming forward in that vacuum as Prop 1 was overturned. This proposition is coming forward from both the administration and a handful of council members who have been working together on it. It's going to do three primary things, and these are not insignificant. The first is that it will repeal sit and lie. So there's some good news in this, that sit and lie will be off the books if passed, which means that nobody can be cited for sitting or lying. The flip side here, right, is that there's also some things that are not going to be as exciting. But the camping ordinance and the pedestrian interference ordinance, so back up for a second. There's been 3 ordinances on the books that police typically use to cite predominantly homeless or unhoused individuals. And those have been sit and lie, pedestrian interference, and camping. This ordinance being introduced today will repeal sit and lie altogether, and then it will consolidate pedestrian interference and camping into one ordinance. Pedestrian interference is being redefined a little bit to knowingly obstruct the right-of-way, meaning on the sidewalk. So if someone's laying across the sidewalk, perpendicular to the street, that could be considered interference. But if they're laying parallel to a building, for example, and you can still pass on the sidewalk, that would no longer be considered obstruction. The camping ordinance stays relatively the same, though we have changed camping paraphernalia to camping equipment and provided some additional detailed descriptions and definitions in the document. The other thing about camping is that it will require a notice prior to citation. So if I am camping on a sidewalk, an officer is required to give me a notice and give me up to 7 days to move along before they can cite me for camping. The intent and the language of the ordinance does indicate that during that 7-day window between notice and citation, that the outreach team would be deployed to engage folks in services and try and provide them alternative locations to meet. The challenging part with both pedestrian interference and camping in this new ordinance is that they do apply citywide, as opposed to the current ordinances, which have a myriad of distances from different types of locations, which was very difficult for SPD to manage. So some good news in there, some challenging news in there. I think the attempt is to try and find some middle ground. And then of course we're not finished, so we know that there still needs to be additional places for people to go. We know that work is not done. We're hoping to make some announcements next week about additional investments we're going to be making to add places where folks can go. So this is not simply the end of the conversation by any means, but those 3 things will all become public today. I presume that they will be on the council committee for discussion on Monday, but that is not for sure at this point. So keep an eye on those things. I'm happy to keep Julie and Robert up to date so they can share that on the Homeless Coalition listserv with you all. It's a lot of big news there. I think most of it's really positive, but there are some challenging components there. We're not going to ignore that. The other thing I want to just acknowledge is that the House and Senate did approve their version of the budget last week and sent that to the governor's desk for signature. It is not signed yet, so concessions could still be made in that process, but a couple of good things that held in the budget. One, our CHG, our Consolidated Homeless Grants, which many of you operate or have agencies that operate, was not cut as deeply as was proposed. We were hearing up to 20% cuts to that grant. We're looking more at 3-ish% cuts, which is far more absorbable. The Road ERP program, which many of you have participated with over the years, it is still taking a $5 million cut from the previous fiscal year, but we've known about that cut for 2 years and have been planning accordingly. So there was threats it would go away completely. So this is good news that it held at the planned amount. And then the third thing that is good news, I don't know if anybody from the counties here, these lights are bright, I'm blinded. I'm seeing somebody point, so someone's been counties here. But the HAHA funds, which are our document recording fees that are also a significant source of local revenue, this budget proposal did clarify some of the caps on those funds, which will actually allow us to activate more of those dollars into the community. That says both a lot and nothing all at once. But the good news on all 3 of those fronts that the cuts aren't as bad, and in some cases we got some wins at the budget level. once the governor signs the budget and it's actually finalized, we'll be able to send more detailed information, but what was looking like a pretty dire state budget scenario for the next state fiscal year has been mostly rectified for our particular space of operations. So with that, there's a whole lot of questions.
Yes. With the consolidated ordinance, what is the expected narrative to come out of this as far as, because with the community, not like within our community, we understand what's going on with some of those ordinances, but the general community well supported, Proposition 1 and passed significantly. So with that piece coming out of repealing ordinances that are in place, in which probably most of the general community was in favor of, what is the expected narrative that the city is hoping to create with this?
I think, and I just noticed Councilmember Klinsky's here too, so I would welcome her to comment, not to put you on the spot, Councilmember. I think that our intent here is to say, yes, we know that enforcement is part of the equation when we're talking about homeless outreach and engagement. However, we don't want to be leading with enforcement, and so the proposed ordinances that are coming forward are intended to do more progressive engagement with folks experiencing homelessness, acknowledging that police need tools at the end of the day to be able to do some of that mitigation when people are having very challenging behavior or not acting in good faith with those laws on the books, but also making it very clear to SPD that our intention to start with is engagement, so that folks have the opportunity first to engage prior to being cited. I would note one other slight change we made. All of these citations would still go to therapeutic courts, not to an alpha court, but we did change the language away from just community court to indicate that it was all therapeutic courts that folks could be referred to as a citation. But I think that the intent here is to say, yes, we know enforcement was well supported at the voter level. I think it was 78-ish% that passed Prop 1, but to also give us the opportunity to start first with engagement for anybody willing to seek services prior to any kind of citation.
Welcome. Would you like to comment?
I think it's on. Is this on?
I believe so.
Oh, it is on. Okay. On Prop 1, I was doorbelling in the office during the time that passed, and so it did come up at the doors, and people would ask me how I was going to vote on it. I was planning on voting no, and I told people that, but it's a more nuanced conversation. I think, yes, people voted to support Prop 1, but Prop 1 was the only thing involving homelessness on the ballot at the time. It's not like people were given a menu of options. How do you want to see this dealt with? So I think the message from the community was do something about Prop 1, but what I was hearing at the doors is do something about homelessness, but be compassionate about it. And I think that's why people voted for me, even though I told them I was voting against Prop 1, is because we need to do something about this, and that's the message that the community was sending. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you mentioned law enforcement. How have they been engaged in this process of drafting this consolidated ordinance?
Yeah, so Chief Hall and his team have been very involved in the language. I think one key thing that you'll see if you're familiar with the prior ordinances is that a lot of the procedural language and the SPD policy was codified in code. We are pulling that out of the ordinance and putting that into administrative code so that Chief Hall can move forward with his kind of compassion first, engagement first approach, and not have his process spelled out in code, which gives us a little bit more flexibility to reach the intent that Councilmember Klinsky was just referencing. But they have been very involved in drafting this language. They're very supportive of this direction, and they're on board.
And do you have time for a couple questions from the audience?
Yes, like 2, sorry. And I'm happy to come back or meet with folks one-on-one too, so it's not the only time.
Any questions?
Or just frustrations. I'm
Or
happy to hear about.
frustrations.
Yeah. Or you don't say good things too. That's
Is the new consolidated ordinance going to include the absurd 1,000-foot rule?
no, it does not. It does state that it's across the city of Spokane, but it does remove that language specifically.
Other questions?
Not a question, but on behalf of the league, and I can't speak for the league, but we presented this recommendation 4 or 5 years ago to find someplace to go. So I'm happy to hear the city is finally looking at someplace for people to go, not just where they can be.
So you guys can all read it, look over it, and again, I'm happy to meet with folks one-on-one or come back next month and share more information. Normally I would not try and cram this into 15 minutes, but you all know how hard it is to get a doctor's appointment.
Well, thank you so much for your time and joining with us, and best of luck with your appointment. Thank you so much. Ariel, would you like to come up and talk about the COC metric information? Thank you so much again, Don, for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome, Ariel. If you could introduce yourself for those who may be new. And it should be on.
This is on, yes, it is on. Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Ariel Anderson. I'm the CHHS Director at the City of Spokane. And I think I've been asked what specifically about the performance.
Any changes to performance metrics with Continuum of Care funded programs?
Yeah, so there were a couple of added metrics in the performance management plan that was passed along with that 5-year. One, we added in eviction prevention metrics. Now that's somewhat, it was a little premature because at some point Commerce is going to give us those metrics for us, but not for a couple more months. But we figured that it would be, advantageous for us to go ahead and plot them in there anyways. And that was kind of a community driven conversation, really relying on those agencies that have done prevention work for a long time, Goodwill in particular, because they've been doing hen prevention for a number of years. And so that was very helpful to kind of lean into those organizations to, just ask, like, what makes sense? So in many ways, we mirrored what we currently do for rapid rehousing. Those measures essentially, are the same. Again, I'm not sure what it's going to look like from Commerce, but we'll see. In terms of, we did change. So one of the things that was weird when we did the second quarter of the quarterly performance reports, this was particularly highlighted in street outreach. Okay, so when we were looking at the dashboards, it appeared as though folks were meeting the measurements for street outreach, and by what I mean in terms of meeting metrics is, a good outcome would be going into substance treatment, transitional housing, emergency shelter, permanent supportive housing, permanent housing, those types of things, right? So when you initially looked at the dashboards, it appeared as though folks were meeting those metrics, but they weren't, according to the contracts that the city or the Continuum of Care would have. And that's okay, right? So I do want to say that the thing with this performance management plan is that if nobody is able to meet those metrics, well, all right, I mean, that's not an issue with the providers, right? We're setting the standard too high, and we're not actually reflecting what is going on in the community. Now, what has happened is that the last 5 years, and the last 5-year plan was passed, we had this thing called the pandemic, if you guys remember, and nobody, it's just, that went to the wayside, right? There was just no oversight because we had to pivot. So I think what's going to be, interesting for this next year is to really dig into that data and see what is working. Now, I'm going to go back to the street outreach, right? So that's just one project. The way in which HUD requires us to report, that's not changing. HUD is always ever just looking at the exits, okay? So that's the universe of data that HUD is focused on. They're only looking at the exits to determine whether or not somebody is meeting the metrics. Well, that's fine, except for the fact that the way in which our contracts read, particularly in an SO street outreach, okay, project is over the course of, say, 12 months, we want you to serve 50 folks, and out of those 50 folks, we have an expectation that you're going to house 20 of those, okay? So the data was skewed. I mean, it just didn't really reflect the work that was being done on the ground. So nothing has changed. It's just the way in which we are reporting it out, which in my opinion, that is what the public and the community wants to see, right? Is how many people are you actually serving, and are you successful with? And if it's very low, well, again, that's okay too. I think in some ways that's a reflection of the lack of available interventions that are appropriate for that individual that exist in our community, which, to be fair, is minimal. We don't have a lot of options for folks. So, I would say aside from that, everything is pretty much the same as it was in the last 5 years in terms of the performance management plan. But it's going to be really key that we continue to revisit those metrics and the expectation that we have set forth for those providers. Because again, if nobody is meeting those, that's not a reflection on the providers, that's a reflection on the metrics that we have set for our community. So, any questions on that?
Are those metrics set by the city who developed the contracts or the COC board?
So, yeah, so it's the SPM, which is the System Performance Measures. So it's a little bit from HUD, and then looking also at our past data for guidance. So we, of course, never want to go lower than what HUD on a national level has collected from other jurisdictions, because we'll compete, we'll no longer be competitive, right? So HUD doesn't come out and say you must have these measures in your 5-year, but there's a practical side of it, which is, okay, well, we don't want to go way lower than that, otherwise now we won't be competitive for continuum of care funding. We have always had a higher standard with the performance management plan that we have than what Commerce has indicated. They do provide some measurements for a couple of projects, Commerce does, but we have always had a higher standard than Commerce. So that's good. Depends. I think again in another 9 months we'll see, right? So if we're not meeting that performance management plan, those metrics there, then I think we're gonna have to come back to the community and revisit that conversation.
And is there an evaluation or audit process for the ongoing adherence to these metrics?
Yeah, so we're currently deep in a monitoring. We did a monitoring last year too, and so, but it was kind of it was very quick, knowing full well that there had been no real authentic or meaningful monitorings taking place over the last prior 4 years. And so that's what CHHS staff is currently doing, and that will all be public. We'll upload that onto the city's website, and then of course with those quarterly performance reviews, that is also a big piece of how we get a temperature check on how the projects are going and how providers are doing. So.
And will those quarterly reports impact the potential of renewal of a contract with a service provider?
100%, yes. So that's been long baked into the contracts, long, I mean the last year. Which is a long time. But yeah, I mean, the expectation is that, it is not an automatic renewal, that, you've got to be meeting these certain standards, right, that are outlined. And the metrics are a part of that for sure. But it's also about, are you submitting invoices on time? Are you doing your monthly data quality checks, which feed into that quarterly performance report?
So where's the middle ground between those quarterly reports and, I guess, going through that evaluation and maybe identifying on the city end that those standards are set too high, like you were describing before? So as far as self-reflection on who's establishing those metrics, but then also the quarterly report from the providers who are responsible to meeting those metrics.
Yeah, so what I would say is that for, this year, I think, so for HHOS, right, these were 3-year contracts, so we'll just focus on that for this conversation. I think it's a little too premature to, look over the course of the last year. One, because those metrics changed, right? Because we had a change in the performance management plan. In addition to that, it wasn't until we just recently adopted an internal policy as it concerns what are the steps necessary to basically give folks notice, and by folks I mean providers notice that you have a potential of having money either deobligated or maybe just canceled. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But I think a big piece of that is the technical assistance piece, right? So you want to see people succeed. And the only way to effectively do that is one, give them notice that they're not meeting the metrics and figure out why, right? Why is that? I think there's a lot of work that we need to do in our community in terms of establishing some best practices for street outreach, okay? That's just one example. And we're starting to get there with these monthly street outreach meetings that we have. And that there is a difference between general welfare checks and then doing case management in the context of street outreach. Those are two very fundamental different ways of approaching street outreach. So that's just an example, right? So I think coming from the lens of being, we don't want to penalize folks. We want to give people an opportunity to improve. So do I see any fundamental things changing in the next, couple of months? No, I don't. But I do think that there are going to be providers that are going to be, given some technical assistance, and that can't just come from the city, right? We need to lean on on the peers, on the other providers that may be doing a fantastic job with a similar project, right? What is it that they're doing, that they're succeeding, and that maybe you're not, doing that? So.
Well, thank you so much, Ariel, for your time and update. And continual attendance at our meetings. I appreciate it very much. And so our next presenter will be the Gabriel Challenge, right? And I will hand this over to Barry. Barry, take it away.
All right, thank you, Robert. Thank you, everybody. The Gabriel Challenge is I'm going to ask the folks who are doing the Gabriel Challenge to please come up and tell us about it. So, Tara, Reverend Kendrick, Terry Swan, and I'm going to move over here towards the end, and you guys just have a seat. So, I don't know Katara well. Reverend Kendricks does. So can you please introduce her and the Gabriel Challenge?
Well, good morning, everyone. I have known Katara for quite a few years, and I'm doing this on the fly. We've had many, many interactions. I know that at Excelsior, she does and gives bang-up work, and they respect her so much, and I think that this speaks to who she is as a woman. As she suffered tragedy, they told her, just take a few months off with pay and concentrate on those things that we need you to, which is grieving and then putting in place the Gabriel Challenge. She's a woman of God, very lovely person, just delightful, and I'm so proud to introduce to you Katara Johnson.
The Gabriel Challenge is not a new program. It's not an organization. It's not those traditional things that we build, because I know that there's a lot of stuff already built. My son Gabriel died 8 weeks and 2 days ago. And I was like, what can this be? It was supposed to be just like Gabriel's challenge, just a challenge for us to show up differently. I was a busy mom, and I looked inside when my son died. I spent the whole day with him. He died a day after his 24th birthday. And as a mom, I was really, really close to Gabriel. Gabriel tried every day to live a life in recovery. And as you know, that relapse is part of recovery. Gabriel tried. He did 3 months, did really good in his program, and he was kicked out for whatever reason and died 2 weeks later. After Gabriel's death, I was devastated as any mother would be, and I looked inside of my email because Gabriel kept trying to send me something. It was this plan called the Community Care Collaborative. And even though my son is gone physically, I had something. And he talked about in his plan about people and organizations coming together, collaborating so nobody falls through the cracks. We all have amazing programs and we talk about it, but we are disconnected. Gabriel knew that because he lived it. When Gabriel relapsed in December, I was struggling because I didn't know where my son was. Looked up and down the street, drove up and down the street looking for Gabriel. But I found Andrew. Andrew had Gabriel's phone. Andrew said he was taking care of my son, but he had been dealing drugs. I talked to him that night and asked him the story. He said, I think your son got hit by a car. And I'm like, how do you know? How do you know? And because of that, I heard his story, how he had been on his own since he was 13 years old. He took care of himself and he took care of the neighbor. And I realized that they met because they both had the same birthday. And his mom wasn't available. So I told him that day I would be like a mom to him if he needed it. I realized something about Gabriel and the guy who was taking care of him. They both had a story. They both needed a family. And Gabe wrote me a letter in December after he relapsed and ended up in his recovery program. He said, Mom, I know where I went wrong. He said, I needed a community outside of my family. At the Celebration of Life, there was hundreds of people. I didn't even have parking. I had to make a parking space. All sides of the aisle politically. Business owners, leaders, all ages, all races in this room. And all I could think is if half of this room was in his life, he would probably be if 5 of the people that were in that room or in his life, he'd probably still be here. So Gabriel's challenge is an opportunity. An opportunity to collaborate, to come together so no other Gabriel is lost. It is an opportunity to show up before obituaries. It's an opportunity to see the people downtown as our family, because family is in the ethos of Spokane. Father's Day was invented in Spokane. And I was wondering how can we make a difference? And I love people, all people, but I knew mothers would do something different because mothers are not playing the game of politics. We're not playing the game of profit, and we're going to come together because we know that these are people. These are our sons and daughters, and they're dying to fentanyl. The county examiner said the fentanyl that he relapsed on was so potent, so toxic that he died instantly. Let that sit. We have sons and daughters dying on the street, dying in their homes. And I've heard people say, oh, but people are dying. I don't care where they die, whether my son died in the Spokane River, where he died in his home, where he died on the street, and he died on the street. Doesn't matter. He died of it. And to lose hundreds of people in a year is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to mothers, it's unacceptable to fathers, it's unacceptable to Spokane. And I know that we can do better if we collaborate. You're talking about this, when they were giving the data of how many people died in March. They say these numbers, but it's like, oh my goodness, that's my son. It's my son. And I miss him. But I know it happened for a reason, because Gabriel's challenge is challenge us to show up differently. Show up differently. Not your agency, but coming together. And so when I went, it's only been 8 weeks, and I'm telling you, Spokane is doing what Spokane does. They're rallying. Yesterday, I went to the superintendent. I said, how do we get upstream? He said, Katara, we can do this, we can do this. He said, but make it clear. So we're going to shut down with a campaign. We're going to shut down the electronics, and we're going to purposefully have presence in Spokane. I challenge pastors. You have congregations. Show up to the places that matter, where people are on the street, asking their story, get engaged, show compassion. Now I thought about it. What kind of help do I need? And so we came up with something Dave always said, shut it down. So shut it down, show up and shift the culture. Turn off electronics, actively engage inside of your community, actively engage in your neighborhood council. But let it start with home. Engage your kids, your kids' friends. You don't have to be a mother biologically. You can be a mothering to other kids in the community, other people, a sister, a brother. Can we solve fentanyl in 36 days? Absolutely not. But what we can do is show up in a way that we've never shown up before, where we put our political desires to the side, we put the proselytizing of our different faiths, we put the nonprofits in our status and who did what with who, and we map out what is currently offered in an active stage of crisis. What is actively available when you're in detox? What's available in early recovery, 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6, 6 to 9 months, 9 to 12 months, year 2, and then year 3 aftercare. Because it takes time. There's no quick fix to this, y'all. None. I walked along my side of my son when he jumped out of the 3rd floor of a 3-story building. I was down in a hospital when I begged them to keep him because I wanted to save his life. How many people don't have family members that will go and have relationship with them because programs are too far? I drove my son every morning at 5-something in the morning to the methadone clinic, and I said hi to every person, and I could see young people, older people, all different people. It has no discrimination. So why are we? That's what the Gabriel Challenge is. So Mother's Day at Riverfront Park under the pavilion, we're going to kick off something different. 36 days of collaboration. 36 days of putting our pride to the side to say, how do we save people? How do we save our sons and our daughters, our friends and our neighbors? How do we do that? It'll be at 6 o'clock, so I'm just encouraging everybody to be with your family in the morning. That's first. But 6 p.m., let's get up in the pavilion. Let's stand with some of the mothers who are in mourning. Let's stand alongside of those that we've lost. Because they're more than homeless. They're more than the drug that they use. They're more than what being undesirable when people look at it when they walk downtown. They're more than that. Because one night Gabriel was walking, because he relapsed at home, and I couldn't have him there with his 13-year-old sister. And I said, how you doing, baby? He said, so cold. He walked up and down downtown. I said, where have you been all day, son? He said, I was at the mall first. I connected to the Wi-Fi, been looking for jobs. He said, I said, well, weren't you at the shelter? He said, there are no spaces, they're all closed, and it was freezing in February. I looked at his face, his nose was so red. And I said, you're not by yourself, son, I'm here with you. I'm with you, I'm right here with you. He had nowhere to go. I said, what about the youth shelter? He said, Mom, it smells like pills and it makes me want to use. So I don't want to be there. We're going to go. And so I'm grateful that my sister, even at a risk to her own child, let him in, because that's what mothers do. So I'm asking mothers and fathers, sisters, brothers, and neighbors to join me in the Gabriel Challenge. I went to the Spokane Regional Health District Administrator, and I was like, what do we do? He said, our work groups can come behind this. I went to the superintendent, and he said, we can come behind this. If we can come together at a memorial service, we can definitely come together for 36 days and figure out how we do this. People said, I nap. My agency nap. I said, but did you do it with community? So the city council president and I has given up city council chambers 5:30 to 7 p.m. every Tuesday between Mother's Day and Father's Day, so we can come together and we can map this thing out and find out where we're losing the Gabriels that remain. So it's only been 8 weeks, so I can't fully define all of Gabriel's Challenge, but I'll tell you this, is showing up, shutting down our differences, shutting down our electronics and showing up in a way that shifts the culture of Spokane. So the family ethos that we have can be enacted, and we look at everybody, because we won't leave that table, that circle, until we figure this thing out. That's Gabriel's challenge.
Jerry Schwab. Can we give the microphone to Jerry? Jerry to talk about, so what's some of the next things we can do?
Does this
And
microphone work?
Yes, it does. And I've got flyers, and I'm saying, could someone volunteer to come up here and pass these out? Thank you, Dan. Just hand them out to folks.
So Spokane was declared the healthiest community in the world decades ago. It's changed.
Here, this one works better.
I've always had the vision that Spokane could do something beyond Hoop Fest, Bloom's Day, and Expo 74 that had to do with taking care of the marginalized people, the people who are unseen, the people that are lost, people on the margins. And Gabriel's Challenge gives us a chance to do that. On March 19th, we gathered at Sheldon Jackson's business. Now, Sheldon Jackson sends out an email to 400 plus business members every day talking about all the stuff that's happening in downtown, all the negative stuff. And at that meeting, one of the members from the faith-based community identified himself as a follower of Jesus. And he turned to Sheldon and goes, "Sheldon, you're really snarky." And Sheldon smiled and he said, "But you've got a great heart." At that meeting, Captain Curtis Reese from the police department was there, the nonprofit community was there, the business community was there, representatives from the government were there. On March 19th, Spokane shifted from a place of division to a place of unity. We experienced alignment. So up until this time, the business community has struggled with the government, and the faith-based community has done their part as best as they can, but everybody's sort of working somewhat separately. The Gabriel's Challenge gives us a chance to reclaim our downtown as our neighborhood, as our arts center, as our sports center, as our hospitality center. We've lost it. Redemption Church moved out. They went up north. The building's empty. Starbucks is shuttered. The downtown is in crisis. There's all kinds of rental space available. Where does the community fit into this? Where do individuals in their homes fit into this? The Gabriel's Challenge allows members of the community to come into this for 15 minutes, for 20 minutes, for an hour, to come into the community and be present. There's a lot of darkness in downtown. We need to have some light. We need to have strength and resilience. It's a place of pain and trauma. I believe the community is part of the solution. The government doesn't do a great job of solving our social problems, but the community can. What can Spokane as a community do to claim their downtown? So, if you go on a website, 297.com, you'll see a map. You'll be able to pin an intersection or a block that you want to come down and be present for. Now, you're not there to fix the people. You're not there to proselytize. You're not there to change them, because that's presuming that they haven't already figured that out. That's insulting to people. But if you listen to them and you listen to their stories and to the tragedy, that's going to help. That's not going to hurt. A lot of people are considered lepers, and people walk by them, and people feel it. They feel the ostracism. That's alienating. That hurts. Well, we're just asking people to come down and be present. If people want to pray, that's up to them. If people want to be prayed for, that's up to them. If you want to pick up garbage, if we have the neighborhoods downtown picking up garbage, the downtown will look different. We did a cornhole flash mob one day, 16 pickups, 16 cornhole sets, second in division. We did a cornhole flash mob. We played cornhole with the people on second in division. We fed them pizza. There was a recreational sense of community and neighborhood. As a result of that, every Friday a group comes to second in division and does one bag 1 hour and they pick up. Have you noticed how second in division looks better these days? Do you realize how bad it was at one point and it's looking better? That's the community. Those are individuals bringing their own garbage bags and picking up trash. What if we did that all over downtown for 36 days? I think it would be amazing. So that's our invitation. My invitation to the nonprofit organizations is come and join us. Come and meet some of the volunteers who are on the streets. Assist them in getting people to resources. Rumor has it that UGM is going to donate 50 beds that are low barriers for people to get into. I don't know that that's been confirmed, but if that's true, that's epic. We don't have enough beds. We don't have enough resources. People need connections. They need a sense of belonging and purpose. They've put fentanyl as their best friend. And we need to replace their best friend with human life, human compassion, human understanding. Thank you very much.
We have some time for questions. We have questions. Questions? No questions. All righty, I'll bring the microphone way in the back.
I love where Tony too. I just tried to look at that website. It just said, sorry, I just looked up the website and I couldn't find it. Can you say it one more time?
You spell it out 297 lowercase.com.
Okay.
Also, Gabriel's Challenge spelled out .com is another website. .org. Gabriel'sChallenge.org.
And I just want to say, downtown is one place where we see crisis, but your neighborhoods, your neighborhood park, your neighborhood, your block, check on your neighbor. 36 days to do something that we can all do. These are things we can do. It doesn't take a federal grant to do that, to be purposeful in your presence.
No questions? No comments? Then we'll be done. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.